Hello, today we're going to be talking about CFIT. CFIT itself stands for Cadet Force Instructional Technique. And whatever I cover today will aid you in passing off your JCIC and SCIC to the highest of standards. However, learning this beforehand will then also enable you to incorporate this in your teaching to get a higher standard of lessons. So today we're going to be covering four main points: the purposes of teaching, the principles of teaching, the types of lessons, and how people learn. I'm CSM Davis, and let's have a look. The why, the purpose. So simply enough, if young people are attracted, they will stay, since they have many distractions and we have to compete with these by making training fun, realistic and rewarding. So distractions can range to anything, and it's your job to then afterwards identify these and then afterwards know how you can compete with these. Okay? Simply enough, it could be between two different cadet organizations, Air Cadets and Army Cadets. You have to find out what their interests are and then afterwards accommodating for those. And then you also have to make it competitive, fun, realistic and rewarding, as it already says. The quote, "A good instructor is one that creates the right conditions for learning to happen and find ways of motivating the cadets." So the only way you're going to get the right conditions is by planning your lesson, knowing what you have, where you're going to be doing it, and how you're going to be utilizing what you have, to then find ways on how to motivate the cadets throughout your lesson. This can be by competitions, of course being healthy competitions, rewards, praising, by making it very, very realistic and out of the blue. Training these cadets is much harder since they're going through the time where they grow both physically and mentally. They may have trouble coping with the amount of knowledge that you're giving to them, or they might just appear to be a bit clumsy. However, we should not patronize them over that and not think about it too much, because they're growing and we want them to stay. Therefore, we have to accept some small little flaws. And then the training should be progressive, and the skills, positivity and knowledge should provide the grounds for the next level. I'm not necessarily saying to create some snowflakes. However, we have to push them to their utmost limits, but then also we have to also accept some of their downfalls as well. However, there it says training should be progressive. So that means that you should have a set training program where you're then after following. And the skills, positivity, which comes from mainly you, and the knowledge which you teach them, should then afterwards give them the building blocks to build up that wall or house to get to that next level. And it's your job to also identify their lack of knowledge and then afterwards implement training so then afterwards they can catch up. The golden circle. I like teaching this a lot to my cadets because it's very, very important to how they are as individuals and also thinking about in the back of their brains what they're teaching. So the innermost circle is why, then it's how, then what. So most people can achieve the what. So the what is what you're literally teaching. So today I'm taking the CFIT lesson. How I'm taking it is by PowerPoint, and then afterwards I'm making a YouTube video out of it and by explaining all the points that I've written down. But then the why. The why, not many people get this, and the why is how you motivate cadets and afterwards they can strive to get more and inspire them to achieve. So the why, for example, for this video, is so then you can pass off your JCIC and your SCIC to the highest of standards, and so afterwards you have the highest of standards of teaching back at your detachments and companies. So you should be thinking, why should they listen to you? That's a very, very fundamental thing, because you can chat anything, but you have to realize, why should they listen to you? Why should they look up to you? Why should they stay? Why are they giving up their own voluntary time or their own time when they can be doing anything else in the world to come to cadets and learn? And why should they want more from themselves? Because remember, we're trying to build them up as people as well as cadets. So we should expect the highest of standards both within cadets and outside of cadets. But why should they listen to us when we say that? And why should they stay so then we can implement that? So the quote for the ACF is inspire to achieve. And that, simply said enough, should be in the back of our brains or minds when we're thinking about teaching lessons. We want these cadets to understand, to know what we're trying to teach, and then afterwards to want to learn more. And there's simply enough, there's a quote which is, I want to inspire people. I want someone to look up at me and say, because of you, I didn't give up. That is one of the most rewarding satisfactions you can get as a senior NCO or NCO teaching. But once you get to that stage of teaching, you have to realize that your learning in cadets has kind of stopped. So it's up to you to take your time out of cadets and also learn this, or even during cadets, to find new methods of learning and etc. So then you progress yourself, because now you're progressing the instructional side of your techniques. and how you are with dealing with people and etc., which is very, very important both within cadets and out in your outside life. Principles of training. So the first is training should be planned and steadily progressive, since we're trying to accommodate them for 5 years. For roughly around 5 years they'll be staying in cadets, and within 3 years you can basically pass off most of the APC subjects. So why should they stay within cadets for an extra 2 more years, just teaching or learning just about nothing? How could we accommodate that? Well, simply enough, you can get them on more courses. You can think of them, for example, passing off signals, doing music, doing CCAT courses and etc., passing off their Duke of Edinburgh. We need to find all these things and after plan them out with a training program, of course, and then after see how can we get them to this level. So gaining of APC qualifications, which are tests of the individual cadets' knowledge and capabilities, should be considered the normal achievement of the majority of cadets. So there should be no individually giving rewards to just one person at all times. All cadets should be treated the same and there shouldn't be any favoritism. That's important to when you're teaching, because then after cadets will see you as a respectable and fair leader. Training should be imaginative and purposeful. Much of it should include competitions, exercises and games. That stated, you can kind of gauge what it means. But with imaginative, think of new ways of how you could be teaching that in a much more interactive way, so then after you're not just lecturing to them, they're also interacting with you, but then after it also has purpose to them. So for example, countryside codes, that's always purposeful, but it's not always taught in the best way. So you need to make them understand the countryside code rules apply to whenever they go on a hike or etc., and make them feel that they need to adhere to that. Knowledge has to be applied, so always do practicals. There's one thing knowing the knowledge, but if you don't know how to practice this or apply it in real life or within cadets, then it's absolutely useless. So principles for cadet instruction. So there's 3 principles: think safety, think enjoyment, think achievement. So let's start with safety. It's your foremost duty of being an instructor to ensure their safety. So remember, safe persons, safe equipment, safe practice, and safe place. Okay? Because you're not necessarily going to let them juggle knives as part of your lesson, because that's not safe at all. Enjoyment is voluntary. They are in cadets because they want to be there, and hopefully they should want to be there, and it's their own time that they're giving up. So unless instruction is to a high standard and enjoyable, then cadets won't stay. So you need to plan your lessons thoroughly. Achievement. Remember, progressive training and to inspire to achieve. So the types of lessons, part 1, theory lesson. So the basic outline of a theory lesson, you usually have your introduction, your main body, and then your conclusion. So the introductions should be the aim of the lessons, the reason why or need for the lesson, and the rules for the lesson being behavior, note-taking, question policy. They should know this from the start, so then after they're aware of what the limits are and what the boundaries are, so then they don't push it. The main body is usually just your key learning points. So like with a drill movement, you have like left turn 1, then left turn 2, and afterwards you combine those 2 movements together. And then after you have your conclusion, summary, revision of the key learning points, assessment, Q&A, and look forward to. And then that's usually, like as I said, with drill, it will usually be incorporating the standard timings of the military, like 1, 2, 3, 1, and then afterwards making them doing without the timings. So the types of lessons, part 2, practical lessons. So most lessons are practical and they need to be. The most efficient method is EDIP. So it's explain, demonstrate, imitate, and practice. So explain what the cadets must do clearly. Then after you demonstrate, so you show them how to perform this skill, you suggest a way on how they can perform this. Do not explain and demonstrate at the same time, so then they're concentrating on what you're showing them. Imitation, get the cadets to copy exactly what you do and then practice it. It should then afterwards become automatic whatever you teach them for enough practice. And always give them constructive feedback, because then afterwards, if it's constructive, then afterwards they want to learn more and you motivate them, and plus they're also gaining bit by bit there without you demoralizing them. So for example, you can, for E, explain how to successfully navigate, orientate the map, match the features of the map on the ground, or use a compass. D, demonstrate how it is done, imitate, let the cadets imitate. P, move to a number of different locations in turn and check each of them to make sure that they're doing it correctly. Put this in use again and again, and afterwards it should become automatic. So when planning and delivering a lesson, so we need to recognize what may be easy for you might be difficult to them or very difficult. So you need to accommodate for that in timings and etc. Try to make training realistic and try to have real equipment. So now afterwards they feel like they're in the moment, they're using the equipment, and that it's much more serious than it is. Allow the cadets themselves to perform the skill. They're not going to learn with you looking over their shoulder. They need to practice it themselves. But be aware of their limitations and take the tasks simple initially. So say for example, you just learned grid references. You want to have some key points on a map, simple enough for them to identify, to then afterwards know what they want to see. Because then afterwards you're not going to be, okay, now about what you've learned in 4-figure grid reference, you can use that to then afterwards identify 6-figure and 7-figure, 8-figure grid references by just using your compass. Try and find it yourselves. You need to make sure that you are only practicing what you teach them, and you can't practice what you haven't not taught them yet. So there's 3 stages to learning a new skill. There's 1, cognitive, so the identification and development of the individual parts of the skill. So repeat instruction and there'll be lots of correcting, so please bear with them. 2, associative, linking the components into a smooth action, give more freedom to experiment and how it feels before giving feedback. Then 3, autonomous, so developing the skill so that it's automatic. In this stage, the cadet can carry out automatically this movement or skill. Mistakes are usually realized by the cadet, so don't patronize them and say, oh, you've done this wrong, because then afterwards they're usually self-aware of it and then they'll correct it for next. So what to look out for and think about. So you need to question yourself. Will my lesson be engaging? Will the cadets remember it? Was it clear and had enough information? So not too much, but just enough for them to know it. Is it out of the ordinary? So now afterwards they actually remember it. Think about your layout, formations of the lesson, and have a pre-arranged plan for how you're going to follow it. Is my lesson plan detailed just enough to keep me on track? And do I know my subject well enough to teach it? And think about how you assess the cadets. Just jumping back 1 point, if you don't know your subject knowledge, then you're much more prone to stuttering, then afterwards feeling uneasy and nervous, and afterwards that's not really the best atmosphere to give up to the cadets, because then they won't learn. Then think about how you're the one taking it. So you are the one who is teaching the assessment. So don't stress. Your word is like God to them, literally. So to conclude, you've learned the first part to CFIT within this lesson series. Whatever I taught here today, please take it on account, take it on board, and then I'll just implement it in your training. Hopefully, whatever I taught you today will help you deliver outstanding lessons, both on JCIC and SCIC, and then afterwards lessons back at attachment. Of course, you don't have to follow it rigidly, and then afterwards take my word as God, as I said earlier. But make sure that you have that in the back of your mind when teaching lessons. Soon enough, this should become automatic, and then afterwards you should be able to produce outstanding lessons. Thank you.